Last month I released the initial gameplay trailer and Steam page for my game Risk and Riches. And in this video, I'm going to discuss the process I went through to set up both. If you're thinking about releasing your own game or just curious about what the process looks like from the perspective of a solo developer, then this video is for you. And if you'd like to check out the store page and trailer, the link is in the description. The first step is to become a Steamworks partner. It's a fairly simple online form and a $100 US dollar fee to get set up. One thing to be aware of and to definitely understand beforehand is your exact business and tax classifications. Mine was somewhat straightforward as an LLC in the United States, but I still managed to get it wrong the first time by selecting the wrong type of LLC. So I was initially denied and just need to go back and redo that section. No big deal, but if you're doing it under a time crunch, having to reapply can cost you a few days. Once you're approved, then you get access to the Steamworks dashboard and all the goodies that come with it. Other than reading through some of the basic documentation, the first thing you're going to want to do is to create an application for your first game. Every game application is $100, again, US dollars, but the $100 fee you paid to become a Steamworks partner is applied to your first game. So you don't need to pay anything beyond that initial $100 fee. To create the application, you'll just need to answer a few questions like the name of the game, what type of software it is. I think virtually everything can be changed at a later date, so don't worry if you're still working on the title. I actually changed mine from Risk and Riches with and being spelled out, A&D, to Risk and Riches with and being an ampersand. What is important is that Steam's going to assign the product an internal ID, and then that's how Steam's going to keep track of your project from then on. Once I had my game's profile ready, the first thing I did was use the tag wizard to set up the initial 20 tags applied to my game. The minimum's 5, but the more tags you can have, the better. Something I did and something I recommend you do as well, if this is your first time setting up a Steam page, is to take the course How to Make a Steam Page by Chris Zukowski on howtomarketagame.com. It's free and it gives you a crash course on everything you'll need to know, and I put the link in the description. From the class and from watching videos by Chris Zukowski and others, I knew that game tags on Steam are super important. They're arguably the most important thing when it comes to visibility on Steam, because it's the primary way that Steam decides which games a player may like and which games to put in front of them. I used a technique from Chris's course to identify a few games that were very similar to Risk and Riches, and then I pulled the tags that they all shared. That didn't get me quite to 20, so I then pulled some that a few of the games had that I also felt described my game, and then included a few additional tags that were unique to Risk and Riches in order to reach the 20 tags. When you're in the tag wizard, Steam shows you a list of games that will appear as similar to your game based on your tags, so it's vital that you pay attention to it and make sure that the games you think should be appearing are the ones being listed towards the top of your list. For instance, for Risk and Riches, the 4 games that I was comparing myself to were other roguelite and roguelike deck builders, such as Slay the Spire, Hellcard, Across the Obelisk, and I added in Balatro as well, since it was a popular new release at the time, although it didn't quite have battling in the way that the other 3 do with enemies. All of them did pop up on the widget that Steam provides in the tag wizard, but Across the Obelisk and Hellcard were a bit further down, because they're co-op and my game is single player. After handling the tags, the next section that I took care of was a survey about the content of the game. Steam asks a few questions about things like violence, if the game is adult only, and if it includes any real-time AI that could produce unpredictable results. Basically, Steam just wants to have a rough idea of the maturity rating for your game. Risk and Riches has some very light violence, so it was pretty straightforward and quick for me to get through the survey. The only thing I had to think about was the appearance of blood in the game. My game is not gory at all, but the bleed status, which is pretty common, has a blood splatter particle effect. So I figured it was best to be on the safe side and mark that it did have blood in the game. Moving on from the survey, I tackled the short description. Again, I used a technique from Chris Zukowski's class. I focused on 4 key elements that summarize the game, and I tried to mash them into a descriptive, action-oriented 300-character statement. For Risk and Riches, I felt the game boiled down to fighting enemies, building your deck, making choices, and purchasing upgrades. With that, I created 5 different iterations of a short description and got feedback from some friends. In the end, I ended up combining 2 of the initial descriptions to make the one currently on the store page. Other than the trailer, the part that took the most time was getting the capsules. There are 5 store capsules, 4 library capsules, a couple of optional images for live broadcasts on Steam, the community icon, and the client icon. Although it's not necessarily recommended by others, I did end up just turning to turning to Fiverr for my capsules. My experience overall was good, and I'm happy with the logo and capsules that I received. The reason I went to Fiverr was to save me the time of trying to find someone, and I knew it would be easy to stay within my budget. All said and done, I paid less than $500 and it took about a month to get everything, including a logo, which was a separate gig. Of course, if you can find a professional artist through your own network that you can work with to make your capsules, it'd probably be the best results. But there are some professionals on Fiverr as well, and it's definitely a viable option in my opinion. And like I said, I'm pretty happy with my own results, given how much I paid and how long it took. I used Angel F if you do end up looking for someone on there. He was very patient, communicated well, and was able to add a little extra to the initial concepts that I sent him, which created a better product in the end. Just please, whether you work with him or anyone else, have an idea of what your vision is. Don't just say, hey, make me something. It'll make life easier for your artists, and it will ensure you get something that you're going to be happy with. Anyways, even though most of the time for the capsules was just waiting for them to be completed, there was a lot of back and forth communication and time spent putting together an initial packet of my requirements and concepts. So it was a day or two of work on my part as well, once you add it all up. After all that, the last pieces I needed were the trailer, long description, and screenshots. But before I got those, I needed to improve the visual quality of the game. So while I was waiting for the capsule art, I spent that same month adding a lot of visual elements, such as the art on the individual cards, an assortment of visual effects, updating menus so that they didn't just have flat colors as backgrounds anymore, and giving everything a bit more detail. Deciding when the game looks good enough to be put up in the public is probably the toughest part of this whole process. And based on my experience and everything I've seen and heard, I don't think there's a foolproof approach as an indie or solo dev. I decided to get the game in a state that resembles the final vision, but is clearly lacking some polish. The advantage of that is more time marketing and collecting wish lists, but the disadvantage is that some people are going to see the game in its current state and interpret that as what the final game is going to look like. I did put an Alpha 1.0 label on the trailer, but not everyone's going to understand what that means. From my perspective, Risk and Riches and other most other indie projects aren't going to have a lot of hype behind them. Nobody knows who we are, nobody knows what the game is at the start. So the increased exposure from releasing a trailer and Steam page early is worth it. But if you have a published game or a game where the visuals are an essential selling point, then certainly there's an argument to be made about holding off. So you've really got to make your own decision based on your own projects and needs at that time. Once I got the game to a point that I felt comfortable showing it off, then it began the process of recording myself playing the game. I took a few hours of footage and then picked out the pieces that best fit the 4 key elements that I'd focused on previously when I was creating the short description. For tools, I used OBS Studio for the recording, and I used CapCut as my video editing software. And it took me about 3 days to record and edit everything. While recording, I turned the music volume off and allowed sound effects to play. And then I overlaid a song from a Western theme music pack I'd purchased for the game as the background for the trailer. I did my best to match the video transitions to the music, but certain sections had to run a bit longer or shorter depending on what I was trying to show off. A lot of the advice out there is to limit the text overlays because showing is better than telling, and I agree with that. So I didn't use any text overlays to describe things and instead just showed those elements off. I think I did a good job of that. Of course, the one negative comment I got on a Reddit post I did for the trailer release was someone saying, that I needed to add the text overlays. But that's a good example of when to filter out bad advice. Always listen to feedback, but don't feel the need to jump on everything that people bring up if it doesn't fit the direction of the game. The last 2 things I handled for the Steam page were the long description and the screenshots. And the reason for that is because I wanted to use the gameplay recordings to capture the still images and to create some GIFs. For the screenshots, I tried to find some good images that weren't in the trailer, but I definitely reused a few parts. People tend to flip through the screenshots or click through the video quickly before watching the full thing. So it's best not to reuse things, but it's not the end of the world if you do, because most people aren't going to notice. What is important for the screenshots is variation, so that you can convey to people that there's a good amount of content in the game and that there's been some clear effort in its creation. Players want to know that it's not an asset flip and that there's further depth to the game. According to Chris Stokowski's research, most Steam users don't really pay attention to the long description. When I'm browsing Steam, I do look at the long description, but only after I'm already interested in the game based on its short description and screenshots, and I'm just looking for some clarity on game modes or a particular mechanic, which I think is in line with how and when most people look at the long description. Why long description? I tried to expand a little on the 4 key elements I've been focusing on in other sections. The most important thing though is using images or GIFs to again show rather than tell. Certainly text is expected in the long description, but a wall of text is not exactly eye-catching. GIFs are better than still images because we're attracted to movement, and GIFs are basically short videos that can convey quite a bit more information, but any sort of visual will improve the overall quality. If you're a Steam user, think about if you were comparing 2 games that are more or less equal, but one of them, the long description, is just a wall of text, and the other is text but has custom images for the titles of each sections. The one with the custom images is going to stick out a bit more, and whether subconsciously or consciously, you're probably going to feel that if the developers took the effort to, make their long description more appealing, that they also took a bit more effort in the game itself. So even though most people are going to very quickly skim over that long description, you want to make a good impression at a glance. At that point, everything was finished, so I double checked it all and hit the submit button for the Steam review. Steam says it takes 3 to 5 days for the review process, and for me it took just over 3 days, and I was approved the first time. When you're approved, the store page doesn't go up immediately, which is a good thing. It won't go public until you hit a publish button. Before I hit the publish button, I reviewed my plan for the initial page release. This is my first game as a solo developer, and if we're gonna be honest, most people don't care. They don't know who I am, they don't know who Growlery Games is, and so no one's really looking for it. But I wanted to do what I could to boost exposure. So late Friday night, I published the store page because it's the first time I had ever done it, so I wanted to make sure it worked how I expected. And then on Saturday, July 13th, the next morning, I got up, I put up the trailer on YouTube, posted to my personal Facebook page, did a Reddit post in r/indiegamedev because I figured that would be the most welcoming for that sort of promotion. Updated growlerygames.com to include the link to the trailer and Steam page, and to include a press kit. And I sent a press release to several smaller online publications that I thought might pick it up, and also to gamespress.com in the hopes that a journalist or blogger would find it and do something with it. Well, I think the attempt was good. Releasing on a Saturday was probably not the best. It was good for social media, but nobody covered the press release. Gamespress.com didn't post it until Monday. I'm assuming because nobody was working over the weekend. But I am thankful that they posted it at all, because at the very least, some industry people that were skimming the site have now seen the names Risk and Riches and Growlery Games. So in the future, maybe a late week release would be better. With YouTube, I tend to publish on Thursdays, and I kind of like that. The video is up for Friday and Saturday, which is when I get most of my views. So I'm considering making Thursday the general release day for the studio as a tradition and for consistency. If I were to change anything, the 3 things I would do differently are to try and get the Steam page up even sooner if the game was in a presentable state, publish the page on a weekday instead of a Saturday, and be more vague on the release date of the game. I initially put the release date up as February 2025, and because I want to take part in the February Steam Next Fest, I need to bump the release date back to March. It's not a big deal, but I don't like the optics of having to push the date back. So my recommendation would be to start broader on your posted release date and then narrow it down instead of trying to give a more exact date from the start. I haven't changed the post release date yet because the YouTube trailer can't be replaced like the video itself can't be replaced. I have to pull the one that's up there and post a new one. But the change will be reflected in Steam in the next month, and hopefully there will be an updated trailer early fall with the new date. What sucks about it is that even though it's a February to March change, it's really just a week, because I was planning on February 28th, the very last day of the month, and I basically just need to do it the next Monday. But lessons learned. And that's my experience for setting up my first Steam page and trailer for my game Risk and Riches, and how I approached all of that. Again, if you're looking for a more detailed step-by-step, I recommend Chris Zukowski's free course, which I linked in the description. I'm not at all obligated to promote that. I just found it very helpful for myself as someone setting up my first Steam page, and would recommend anyone else to check it out as well. If you're new around here, my name's Peter. I'm the solo developer behind Growlery Games. You can check out Growlery's first game, Risk and Riches, by following the Steam link also in the description. A couple times a month I try and put out videos covering my journey of starting an indie studio and getting it off the ground. I hope not to always be a solo developer. And I also do some devlogs and announcements on the current projects that I'm working on at the time. As always, if you haven't done so, please like and subscribe to join me on this journey, and I'll see you in the next one.